Welcome to my show. I'm Elizabeth Liz Machette, and we are the Astrology Star Sisters. And joining me today for the Astrology and Tarot for Gemini season is Joy Vernon and Madam Simon. Welcome. How are you ladies today?
Awesome, awesome. Good to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, doing well. Glad
Good.
to see you.
Joy is an astrologer, a tarot reader, and a Reiki master, and her website is joyvernon.com. Madam Simon is an archetypal astrologer, tarot reader, visionary artist, and her website is iconalchemy.com. And I'm an astrologer, author, and intuitive, and also read tarot, and my website is alightpath.com. So we are in Gemini season, and Simon is sharing a piece of her artwork. I'll let her tell you all about it.
Thank you, Liz. So this is another one of my digital collages. I take all of the photographs for these collages myself and then piece them together in Photoshop. So that's what this one is. It's called, I don't even remember what it's called. But it is wind themed. And since Gemini is an air sign, I thought that would be appropriate.
I love it. It's beautiful.
Thank you for sharing it with us. I'm not going to talk much today. I just had a couple teeth pulled. So, Joy, maybe you'll do the first half and Simon will do the second half.
Yeah, that works. So we're looking at Gemini, and the modality is mutable. And a lot of my favorite keywords for that are evolving, mediating, adapting. It's distributing. And by that, I think of like when a gear distributes energy from one thing to another thing. That's what I mean by distributing. It's accommodating. It adapts to different things. It accommodates. The ruling planet is Mercury, and the element is air, which is thoughts, beliefs, communication. It's our logic and our curiosity.
And the mantra for Gemini is I think. Some keywords are ideas, information, multitasking, intellect, versatility. Gemini is considered to be sociable and quick-witted. Some of the cautions are black and white thinking, or being superficial or glib. Gemini can have a reputation for having a somewhat dubious relationship with the truth. And the thing is, that doesn't necessarily mean that Gemini is intentionally lying. Gemini is processing so much information. And a good keyword that we left out of this actually is responsive. Gemini can be very responsive. But in the process, because Gemini is getting so much information, and then trying to process and respond to that information, they're going to change their opinion to respond to the new information. And if the rest of us don't have that new information, then we're like, well, what's going on? Didn't you just say? And then Gemini is, I did, but I got new information. Keep up.
Thanks for sharing. And then, Joy, will you lead us through this?
Yeah, absolutely. So here's the Gemini ingress, and this is for May 20th, 2026. The time will be 5:37 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time, and that's set for Seattle. And so we are looking at the sun at 0 degrees of Gemini. It's just less than 1.5 degrees away from Uranus, and Mercury is just a few more degrees down the line. So we really have kind of a triple conjunction there. The sun and Uranus are square, and Mercury, the whole group of them, are square to the nodes, which might be worth talking about a little bit, although I didn't make a special slide for it. And then the sun is ruling our midheaven, in Leo. And so that is kind of a nice, strong position for it. And we also have a T square off of Mars, that kind of Mars Chiron there at the Mars at the beginning of Taurus and Chiron at the end of Aries are square to the moon and to Pluto, with a moon Pluto opposition. Moon is at this point, it's at the very end of Cancer, opposite to that Pluto at 5 degrees of Aquarius. You could also say that the Mars is square the MCIC axis. So kind of in that, I mean, kind of a lot going on there, I think. But the thing that is particularly interesting, we do have Venus ruling the ascendant from her decan in Cancer, and she is co-present at the ingress here with Jupiter and the moon. But before the month is out, the Gemini month is out, we're going to have Venus conjoining Jupiter, and that's going to happen on June 9th. And then there's some other, then Venus will move into Leo, and I think what else? Mercury changes signs. There's some other things going on, but I do want to point out that Chiron enters Taurus because it's been a while here, in 7 years or so in Aries, and so it's going to be moving into a new sign during, again, this Gemini season on June 19th. Anything that's standing out for you, Simon?
Well, definitely that Sun and Mercury and Uranus conjunction all squaring the nodes, particularly because Uranus is currently in a partile conjunction with the trans-Neptunian object Sedna. And Sedna relates to feelings of victimization and the process of turning that experience, not just feelings, but actual experiences of victimization, into personal power. She's very potent. She's way far out there in the solar system. She's quite some distance from us. But and she's got like a big, long, elliptical orbit. But so here, all of these planets are currently conjoining on top of Sedna. And with that being part of that ongoing minor grand trine that we've been experiencing with all of the outer planets, that really puts this idea of how do we move from a space of feeling victimized to a space of personal power within the context of the ongoing societal changes.
Go ahead, Joy.
So here we have our tarot cards for the ingress. And so the first decan of Gemini is the 8 of Swords. And our decan ruler for that is Jupiter, which is a Wheel of Fortune. And the Gemini major arcana card is the Lovers. So I've got the 8 of Swords and the Lovers up there. The Gemini... I have lots of Gemini friends. It's just like Geminis are very easy to get along with, and they're very sociable. They like to have parties. They like to talk. They like to get to know people. And so our tarot cards for Gemini, though, we get the 8, 9, and 10 of Swords, which are 3 of the most stressed out, anxious, like I don't know what the right word is. I'm like disturbed, unpleasant. I'm not quite sure, but they're not the most fun. That's for sure. They definitely are not showing your typical Gemini parties. But Gemini, and we didn't include this in our shadow side for Gemini, but Geminis and anybody with a strong Mercury placement can be very anxious and suffer a lot from worry. And so it's not the fun side of Gemini, but it is a true side of Gemini. And so our Eight of Swords here is starting off that cycle of the 3 Gemini cards. With a good example of that. This is a great card for just simple analysis paralysis. Too many ideas. It's ruled by Jupiter. Too many swords are the ideas. Gemini is the ideas. Jupiter and Gemini, too many ideas. I like to think of this card ironically as I always forget the word, a sensory deprivation chamber. And when you've got too many ideas, what do you do? And a lot of people think that she's been put there against her will somehow, but I'm like, no. She knows what she needs in order to stop that constant chattering in her brain. She needs to turn the lights out, cover her eyes, sit still, get her body steady and stable, and then she can start to feel in to the rest of her body, out of her brain, get into her body, her feet, which are bare, and really, and touching water, get into her emotions, like integrate her mind with her body and her emotions. And I think that really allows her to find her clarity when she's got too many ideas going on.
Simon.
So, yeah, kind of bouncing off of that a bit. Gemini, yes, when you have lots and lots of ideas, there is no guarantee that those ideas will be helpful. Okay. And so, if we want to go to the extremes, Gemini can be associated with mental illness for that reason. Okay. Something Gemini can also very much be associated with, as is the case also with people with prominent Mercury. I have experienced this, is insomnia. Okay. Your brain does not shut off, and therefore it is difficult to rest. And so that's very much appropriate with the analysis that Joy gave for the Rider-Waite-Smith image. Again, as a Mercury prominent person, I happen to very much enjoy separate sensory deprivation tanks. It is actually a way that I help to shut out all of the excess. But we can also see very much in the Thoth version of the Eight of Swords, you see these swords that are at cross purposes to the 2 central swords. Okay. And so, those 2 central swords are very much the Gemini, the Gemini twins, the weighing different possibilities that Gemini can do. And then there's all these other swords that are operating at cross purposes. And so a lot of times I very much think of this card as relating to things like gossip and the challenging parts of when we are very sociable and we know lots of people. Well, lots of people want to put their input into our business. Okay. And so again, there is a need to then kind of clear away that excess or to be willing to perhaps put up some good boundaries. Note that in the Thoth card, we see Jupiter in Gemini, which we had going on last year. And that was a whole lot of data coming at us and a lot of misinformation, right? There were no safeguards on what constituted real or unreal data, right? And so I very much look at, asserting some Saturnian boundaries as being an appropriate way to counteract the challenges of this card.
Do you want to comment on the Lover's card, Joy?
Sure. Yeah. Gemini is the twins, and I always think the Lovers is always one of the harder stretches when we've got our Golden Dawn correspondences. But when you look at it as the twins, a lot of time the idea of people that match each other, people that communicate easily, people that do feel like a balance to you, that match to you. I think that is a nice way of looking at this. But one thing that we often hear, like in the BOTA system and things like that, and I think it's really useful, is the man represents our consciousness, which I think is fairly equivalent to the Gemini energy. And the woman represents the subconscious. And the angel is the super consciousness, which is, the higher mind where we're all trying to get our consciousness raised to. But the way to that super consciousness is through the subconscious. And I think that is just a really interesting thing when looked at from the perspective of Mercury, the ruler of Gemini, who is the deity that's allowed to go to all three worlds. He can be on the everyday world of everyday life, and he can descend into the underworld. In this case, that would be symbolic of the subconscious, and he can rise up to Olympus, the world of the gods, which would be symbolic of our super consciousness here. So it might not, your first impression might be that this card doesn't have anything to do with the Gemini, doesn't have anything to do with the Lovers, but when you think about it, it's like, oh wow, that's pretty cool.
Simon, would you like to comment?
So in the Thoth version of the card, we see the previous card, which was the Hierophant, is performing the Hieros Gamos, the sacred marriage between these two figures. And you will note we've got black and white there that is then mirrored into smaller figures so that we have male and female, but also anima and animus. Okay. The masculine and feminine each within their counterpart. We also have the symbols of the eagle and the lion for the eagle representing Scorpio, the lion representing Leo. But also, as a result of that, Leo is associated with fire, Scorpio is associated with water. And so again, we're reinforcing that emphasis on the meeting and joining of opposites. Okay. Gemini isn't just the twins. Gemini is like the good twin, the bad twin, the angel and the devil on our shoulder. Okay. Gemini is about that process of getting seemingly opposite things to work together well, right? We should remember that Mercury, ruler of Gemini, is hermaphroditic. Okay, contains both sexes. And so there is an association there also with both genders, or other genders besides. Okay. There is this mixing that is going on here. Also, we see, that cosmic egg with the serpent wrap of wisdom and regeneration wrapped around it. There is that sense of the ability to create whole worlds, whole universes, okay, from the mind. Joy said, initially, it doesn't seem like the Lover's card should be, associated with Gemini. And yet I very much feel like this card actually sort of starts us on that journey of what is it to actually love. Okay. As the song says, love is a verb, love is a doing word. Okay. And Gemini starts in the mind, right? Okay. In order to have the action of love, we have to first start with that concept. And that concept comes in Gemini through the human process of mirroring, where we look at another person, and in the process of seeing them, we learn things about ourselves. Okay. And real lasting relationships involve this process of like fully seeing each other. I mean, literally, the biblical notion of sexual congress is to know your partner, right? That is the word. And it's not just used biblically, it's also used in multiple other cultures as well. Okay. And so within Gemini, here is this need to know thyself, but also know the person that you are facing, and know yourself more as a result of knowing the person that you are facing. To be able to look into each other as if we are mirrors to each other. And in the process, support each other in being our best selves. Okay. Good relationships are where we can be our best selves with the other person. Okay. There's that notion, so-and-so brings out the best in me, or so-and-so brings out the worst in me, right? That's the flip side. So this card really, as you get into it, it's like, oh yeah, this really does have a lot to do with love relationships. Okay.
Thank you. Joy, go ahead.
So here we have our Sun, Mercury, Uranus conjunction. And so the Sun's right there at 0. And we've got and I just repeated the info that we had before. It's conjunct those other 2 planets and square to the nodes and ruling the midheaven. And so here's where we get to dive into this just a little bit more. I mean, first of all, Mercury's in its home sign, and Uranus is the octave of Mercury, so it is certainly going to have a certain degree of comfort in Gemini. It's a sky god, so it likes things that are airy. And so we've got these planets that are doing pretty well here in this sign, and I think the thing that probably is that I feel most intensely as I look at this is that Uranus and Mercury, which the Uranus-Mercury conjunction is definitely over. Mercury is 6 degrees separated, which is pretty decent in terms of, I don't know, that's definitely a conjunction, but it's moving away. But Mercury and Uranus together, to me, is just some of that 8 of Swords energy. Uranus has such an intensity to it, and such a like constant like grinding or towards new ideas and innovation and what else can we do, and it has such an electric quality to it that it really does represent nervousness and the nervous system along, right there along with Mercury. And so I do think that there's a lot of anxiety that can come out of this conjunction, but at the same time, what a great opportunity for new ideas, new ways of doing things, making some shifts. So there can be some really nice, thinking outside the box for our solutions. I think that's the promise that we really get here. Now, square to the nodes, if I am calculating this right, I believe that those planets are at the north bending there. And so they're going to be representing, they're going to partake of some of the north node energy and represent things that are the direction that we're going, the coming into being type of energy that we get with that north node. This is really the north bending is the culmination of that energy. And so to see that, and we're just at the very tail end because the nodes go retrograde. We're at the very tail end of our Virgo Pisces placement, and they're soon moving into the next set of signs, Aquarius and Leo. And so to have that tail end of this 18-month cycle of the Virgo Pisces energy, and to find this opportunity of this culmination energy there in Gemini with Mercury, Uranus, and the Sun, to me really gives it clarifies the direction, and I think fulfills a promise, I guess, is how I see that. What do you think, Simon?
Well, when I'm looking at planets that are at the bendings of the nodes, I am looking at something that has potentially stepped off course, that has stepped out of the path, the karmic arc of the nodes, and says, there's something over here I have to deal with. Okay. If we want to look at that from from a reincarnation, past life, karmic standpoint, then it would be something we didn't learn before in a previous life. But even if we're just going, oh, we just got this life, right? It still can be, something from the past showing up that we didn't know how to adequately deal with at the time. And now we have to address it again. It's come back around for us to pay attention to. Mercury and Uranus. Yes, there's definitely that kind of quickness of thought that can show up there. Also, sleep disruptions that can show up when those two are in cahoots. But again, fitting this into that larger context of the minor grand trine, I can definitely see this as like, the events of the world weighing on one's mind. Also technological glitches. Certainly, with Mercury and Uranus, there can be leaps forward in technology. But there also can be that kind of things are moving so fast and circuits get fried. Right? Especially with the sun there. Because the sun inherently brings a little fire to every situation, right? There definitely can be some kind of sense of surprises there anytime we're dealing with Uranus. Remember that Mercury tends to have that action of quickening whatever it touches. And Uranus already can deal with sudden surprises. So we can, and in Gemini, everything's already moving fast, right? So Mercury definitely in the process of bringing that speed, that can have our heads kind of whirling a bit. With our attention being focused there, then the question is this actually something that I need to deal with simply by putting that attention and that brain power to it, or is part of the lesson that I needed to learn that I didn't learn before, how to get grounded while doing this, right? This is a prime touch grass moment. Okay. Go hug a tree, go pet your cat, do whatever it is you need to do to get yourself bring yourself a little bit back down to earth. Okay. And again, within that larger context of that minor ground trine with the outer planets, there is such a sense of, we're living in interesting times and big forces are at work. And when those things touch the personal, in this case, Mercury being a personal planet, and then also one of the lights, the sun, we can have that sense of suddenly big things bearing down on us and, oh, whoa, how do I deal with all that? Okay. Gemini, one of the things about Gemini is that Gemini, like Virgo, also Mercury ruled, is detail oriented, right? Now, Gemini can certainly gloss over some details because it likes to, just to do things very quickly and get kind of into, just the surfaces of things. I got a quick look at this and then I got a quick look at that, right? I don't have time to get into the weeds. But at the same time, because Gemini does process lots of information, it gets curious. That's another great keyword for Gemini, right? Is getting curious about things. And so I feel like when we're feeling a little bit overwhelmed, especially with big stuff and things moving fast and all of that, taking the time to lean into Gemini curiosity can actually be a way of grounding ourselves, because it asks that we, look at something just a little bit more carefully, right? So yeah, and I think all of that feeds back into what I talked about before, which is the connection with Sedna, to take us out of a sense of, oh, woe is me, bad things are happening, out of my control, I'm being victimized, all of that, and instead be able to say, oh, but wait, who am I becoming in the process of experiencing these things? How am I leveling up, to use gamer terminology? Remember, Mercury is the Lord of Games, okay? And so this can be a great time for us to gamify some of our experiences of the big things going on in life that are a little bit scary. Okay. And to, give ourselves some appropriate rewards when we manage to make it through another level. Okay. Pat ourselves on the back and then use that to encourage ourselves to get moving forward to the next level.
Thank you for all that, Joy. Is there anything else you want to add to this one?
No, I love it. And I'm planning my games right now.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so here we have our tarot cards. And so I'm it's always like, which card should we use? So I of course start with the planetary ones. We've got the sun is the sun, the fool is Uranus, and the magician is Mercury. I didn't pull a Gemini card, we could have added the Lovers, or we could have added that 8 of Swords. So if you want to think of these 3 cards in the context of either of those other Gemini cards, or even the Knight of Swords might even work there. You can do that, but I thought that this was enough to kind of give us a starting point. And so we've got the bright shining sun, and we get a real interesting angle where the sun is bright and centered, beaming down on the back of the head of this child. And then we go into the center, and we've got the sun up in the corner, beaming down on the back of the head of the Fool. And both the child has his arms spread, the Fool has his arms spread, and they're both embarking on something. And I think Mercury likes to travel, so embarking always makes him happy. We definitely get that sense of movement forward, of anticipation. I like both of these cards, and they both make me happy. And then the Magician, it doesn't have the sun in the card itself, but we have the gesture to the above and to the below, which again is our mercurial ability to travel between the different worlds. And as we mentioned with the Lovers card, can be achieving the higher consciousness via the subconsciousness. And that manages to tie in really nicely with these other cards. The sun could represent that higher consciousness. And the Fool is about to step off that cliff. And where's he going to fall? Well, in the cube of space, he falls straight down to the High Priestess, which is the subconscious. And so yeah, definitely we're definitely seeing a lot of those energies coming out in these cards. I think maybe the question as you plan your game and anticipate your goal is, what subconscious journey do I need to make in order to elevate to this new level that I'm trying to achieve?
Simon.
So, in the Thoth deck, we've got, the sun is shining on these 2 figures that are dancing, that are basking in the sunlight. They have been on a journey through the previous major arcana, right? They've been on a journey, and now here they are, not yet at the top of the mountain, not yet at their goal. We see that wall around the top of the mountain indicating that they are not there yet, but they're taking a moment to stop, to appreciate, to bask in the sunlight, to dance around, to have a good time, and to acknowledge how far they have come. And again, this goes back to that notion of leveling up, right? Of recognizing that, yes, there are challenges to be faced. Yes, there are things that may be difficult now, and yet we are all very different people from who we were just a few years ago. And we have been through things that have taught us lessons, and we have done some leveling up so that we can face whatever it is that we are facing now. Okay. Gemini is, among other things, associated with early childhood learning. The acquisition of language in the first place. Okay. Our ability to think and to communicate with others, and in the process to differentiate ourselves from those who have gone before us. Okay. So I see the sun here as, it traditionally can represent a time of celebration, but also new beginnings that we can see that are effectively building on the old, right? But also giving us that sense of liberation from the old that is not serving us anymore. Okay. Now you combine that with the Fool. One of the things about the Fool that we see in this version of the card, we have the tiger that is biting the Fool's leg, although the Fool seems to not even notice or care. There's also a crocodile hanging out down below. The crocodile very much relates to our lizard brains, okay? And the tiger can represent fear as well, okay? So fight or flight mechanism, as well as fawn and freeze, we can see with the crocodile, but also that straight up, there's a tiger, oh my goodness, right? And the thing about the Fool can take steps that certainly can be seen as foolhardy, right? To not be paying attention to things that we should legitimately be afraid of. And yet here this Fool is he's not looking at either of them, but he is very still present with them, right? That tiger does actually have a grip on his leg. Okay. And so sometimes what can seem foolish to others is in fact us acknowledging what we're afraid of and moving forward anyway, which is, of course, the definition of courage, right? So the Fool, also, we see there's that number 0. Okay. The contribution of Arabic and Indian thought to mathematical thought. Okay. And within that 0 then is the empty space in which all things are possible, because they have not been defined. Right? So here we go from that 0 space where things are possible. It's the breath, the intake of breath before we exhale and we start moving forward, right? And we start moving forward with the magus, with the magician. Okay. So here we're going. This is very, very Gemini, this combination, right? Because this is like binary code, off, on, 0, 1. Okay. And so we're moving from that empty space, that possibility that I don't know, I could be being brave or I could be being stupid, but I'm still going to move forward anyway. And now when we move forward, here is the magus. And the magus is very much Hermes. And what are they doing? They are juggling all of the 4 suits of the tarot, all of these emblems of the 4 elements, all of these possibilities. There is something highly playful here. Note that this magus is not starting with work. The magus is starting with play. Okay, that again goes back to the early childhood resonance of Gemini. Okay, but also with this sense of what is possible and how am I going to know what is possible unless I'm willing to kind of play around with what I got and see what I'm dealing with. Okay. So that playfulness there very much relates to Gemini. And again, that sense of like early childhood learning and how do we define ourselves? Okay. How do we move forward into the world to do all of the things that we will come to do over the course of the major arcana in the tarot, all of the things that we're going to be doing in our journey. So I find this really interesting because we've got these two starter cards, so to speak, here after the sun, right? Which is much later in the major arcana. Okay. Why am I noting that? Because there is this process of starting anew at each level, at each challenge that we face. Okay. Yes, we have learned lots of things in the process before, but this is a new moment. Okay. And each of those new moments gives us new possibilities. We are not chained to our prior failures, for example. So I really love this combination. It's just like, it's this lovely burst of energy and enthusiasm and possibility and learning. And learning as like a fun thing, taking us back to being a kid and everything being new and exciting.
Joy, do you have any other comment?
No, that's awesome. I love it.
Then we have the Venus conjoining Jupiter, and I'll let you take it away, Joy.
So, and again, I think this is, well, I guess we added some more info on this slide. So here we have Venus conjoining Jupiter in Cancer, 25 degrees of Cancer on June 9th. Jupiter's in its exaltation, and Venus and Jupiter normally conjoin every year in a different sign every year. But it doesn't always happen that way. And so they actually conjoined in Cancer last year as well. And that was at 14 degrees. Before that, so then, and then they typically, if they're going to join in Cancer, that'll be about once every 12 years, next year they'll join in Leo, but that will be again about once every 12 years that they'll join in that sign, and so on. Because our little pattern got off here and we had Cancer 2 years in a row, the time that they joined in Cancer prior to that was actually June 3rd of 2002 at 17 degrees. And our next one will be 12 years away in 2037 at 2 degrees of Cancer. And so that one is going to have not only Jupiter in its exaltation, but it'll have Venus in her decan. So that is going to be, I just love Venus. I love the Venus Jupiter conjunction because it is such a nice energy. It's always visible in the sky, so you can always go out and look at it. And it's two bright planets getting together. It's just a very, very just lovely experience. And so I think those are the main things that I probably wanted to say. What else is there?
Simon, do you want to say anything?
Yeah, Simon, what else do you want to say?
Well, what's actually leaping out at me right now is how Uranus is in a partile square to the lunar nodes. Like it's like real close, real on the dot. There's just like a 20 minute orb between them. I find that to go alongside of this Venus-Jupiter conjunction in a very interesting way. Again, that really can relate to surprises. But now here you've got both of these benefics joining together in the sign of Jupiter's exaltation. And so that is some pretty potent, fun, kindly, yummy juju to go alongside of our surprises. Now, that said, this Venus-Jupiter square conjunction is square Chiron, as Chiron is at the 29th degree of Aries. Okay. One of the things that I see sometimes with Jupiter square Chiron in particular, or in a hard aspect of Chiron, I should say, is a tendency toward like things that were suddenly brought together are suddenly brought apart. Okay. But in this case, because Venus is involved, I very much feel like that's probably for the best. That, we may be able to let go of some old hurts, that we may be challenged to let go of some old hurts. With Chiron. Chiron is wrapping up its sojourn in Aries. As Joy mentioned before, Chiron's going to be heading into Taurus. Venus ruled Taurus. And so Chiron in Aries here, at that 29th degree, squaring off against that Venus-Jupiter conjunction, suggests to me, among other things, the willingness to perhaps let go of ego a little bit, let go of the need to do things, and perhaps just enjoy that being energy of the Venus in Jupiter conjunction.
Thank you. Any other comment, Joy?
Yeah, I love that, and I had also noticed that square earlier when I made the slideshow and then forgot about it. So I'm really glad you brought it up. I always get such a lovely connection and relationship type of energy from that Venus Jupiter conjunction, and particularly when it's in Cancer. We get that sign of the home or of the mother. It's just a very cozy thing. And with Chiron in Aries, and I like the keyword identity for Aries. So Chiron has been exploring identity and healing identity in its 7 years that it's been here in Aries. And so just as Simon was saying earlier, with love and looking into the mirror with the Lover's card and the Gemini twins, like seeing seeing yourself in another person, seeing the other person for who they are. I think we've got the healing of identity, which allows us to explore relationship. And if the relation and I guess because it's healing, kind of if the relationship is not going right, let's return to our own sense of identity and recognizing that the Cancer things can be very intuitive, very empathic even. And so the more that identity, that sense of identity and individuality is healed, the easier it is to truly engage a deep relationship. So I think that's just kind of how it all tied together for me.
Thank you.
I do think it's notable that, the moon that rules that Cancer is just separating from a conjunction with Neptune, which can be very romantic, right? But it's applying to the conjunction with Saturn, and Saturn is squaring off against Mercury. Okay. Mercury, who rules Gemini, rules that sun in Gemini. We're still in Gemini season here. And that square between Mercury and Saturn, Mercury is applying to the square. It's a partile square. So, it's pretty tight. And so this may be a time when we need to have some serious conversations, shall we say, okay, that can have an impact on our relationships. I do feel like, again, because it's Venus, Jupiter, I mean, it's the two benefics doing their benefic stuff, right? They're going to have an impact on that. And Mercury is answering to the moon in this context. Okay. I think that is going to make for, yes, there may be some serious conversations, but those serious conversations are, things that are going to be important to our hearts. Okay. It should be noted that the moon in Aries being youngest sign, when you combine that with the overall, this is Gemini season, again, can bring that kind of childlike sense of wonder, sense of newness to things. But also that presence of Saturn there is going to make things kind of a little bit serious.
I'm sorry, Liz. I'm going to throw out one more thing. I love it when we get in the conversations. I maybe I'm a hopeless romantic, or maybe I just am more optimistic. But I do think of Saturn frequently, especially when it comes to relationships, as being about commitment.
Mhm.
And because Neptune, although romantic, as you said, also can be about confusion. I almost feel like this loving Jupiter, Venus, Cancer combination with the moon moving away from the confusion of Neptune, and Chiron reminding us to heal our sense of individuality and identity, and the moon moving towards the commitment that Saturn provides, that this actually could be a really nice time for somebody to get clarity around a relationship, maybe be finally willing to make a commitment to it. So I think there's some very nice things.
No, Saturn can very much be the ties that bind.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that is useful. Note there's also that yod there between Pluto and the Neptune moon combination, pointing to the south node in that Mercury ruled Virgo. And south node in Virgo can be where we are comfortable, okay, getting practical, okay, that where we are comfortable with tending to details, but also perfecting a process, as in moving forward in a relationship. But also potentially letting go of like nitpicking and criticism and all of that kind of thing. So again, I feel like there is this, this willingness to, yes, have some serious conversations, but also a willingness to potentially, don't think about it too hard and instead enjoy.
Go ahead, Joy.
I love it. I love it. I love it. And the halfway point, of course, of the sextile was the North Node in Pisces, which is that, place of Venus's exaltation and the kind of deep universal love, compassion. So even getting out of the nitpicking and resolving that into a very deep universal love. I think there's so much nice in that chart, actually. So here's our cards. And so I've got Venus is the Empress, and Jupiter, of course, is a Wheel of Fortune. And then for Cancer, I chose the Decan. And so we've got the Four of Cups. They were at 25 degrees of Cancer is the degree of their conjunction. And this is it's such an odd little combination because we've been talking very positively about this and seeing a lot of beauty in it and a lot of growth as well. And so here we have our Empress, who is outdoors. She loves nature. She's very creative. She is the queen of heaven, and she's just there in all of her comfort and leadership and rulership. There's that flow of that waterfall behind her and the bright yellow of the grain below her. And then we go over there to the Wheel of Fortune. And there can be that rising up, culminating, descending, the coming into being and going out of being, which the Empress is often shown pregnant or suggested that she's pregnant. And so even that Jupiterian cycle, this turning of the wheel of coming into existence. And then, I mean, the wheel is about cycles a lot of the time. And so there's just kind of a relationship, I think, to our pregnant Empress. And the and it's in Cancer, which is ruled by the moon, and the Four of Cups is ruled by the moon, and the moon can represent gestation and has those cycles as well. So we really kind of get all of these different things just weaving together into a very intricate braid here. Our Four of Cups guy just always looks so glum and difficult, and like he just is like, I don't know, I don't really care, I don't want any of it. I think the most positive expression of this card is one of meditation and kind of an intentional withdrawal from emotional cycles, that Wheel of Fortune maybe, and kind of connecting with the ground, with the tree, with stability, connecting it with the body to release some of the emotional unevenness. But I also think the title of the card is Blended Pleasure. And I always think, what is the pleasure blended with? And I think there's something very bittersweet about when you achieve a pleasure, there's almost this immediate sense of, oh, there's no more longing for it. There's no more yearning. There's no more curiosity about what it's going to feel like. Now I have my pleasure, and it's almost blended with a little bit of this sense of, I don't know quite what the word would be, but just like I'm still not getting it. I want to say disappointment, but that's a Five of Cups. And so I'm like really trying to avoid that. But I guess I'll just say it. There's a little bit, maybe because their Four of Cups is adjacent to Five of Cups. So yeah, the pleasure is blended with disappointment. And so trying to find the fullness and the beauty of the conjunction, recognizing that it's part of a cycle, recognizing that as soon as it joins, it immediately separates, and it's over. And we lucked out. We had it in Cancer 2 years in a row. It's going to be another 12 years before it's in Cancer again. And so there's just this sense of the fulfillment tied with the turning of the wheel and the letting go of that fulfillment. That's maybe a little bit more I don't know, sad than I intended it to be.
Go ahead.
So I'm actually going to focus on that luxury card for a moment. It coming off of what Joy said, because the feeling of that card in the Thoth deck is pretty different.
Yeah.
We see that it is connected to the moon in domicile, right? The moon in Cancer. And the moon relates to our feelings, our instincts, our knee-jerk reactions. What do we do before we've thought about it? Which is interesting within the context of Gemini season. Since that is a Mercury, a thinking season, right? And so, this conjunction of Venus and Jupiter in Cancer in this space where the moon is domiciled. Cancer is associated with home, with the nurturing parent, typically seen as mother, but not always the case. But that very much then, of course, relates to our Empress, right? Every time I see the Empress card come up, my first question is, what's your relationship with mama? What's your relationship with nurturing, not just with mama? Okay. What is your relationship with the process of nurturing somebody else? What is your relationship with the process of nurturing yourself? Again, that goes back to the mirroring process that I talked about. Okay. What are you nurturing within yourself while simultaneously nurturing something within somebody else? Giving them what I think is the most important thing about Cancer, which is safe space. Safe space to fully be ourselves. Safe space to feel what we feel. And then in Gemini season, potentially express some of that. Okay, to have conversations within this space of, okay, here are these two benefic planets, one relating to our love and our pleasure and what is beautiful and worthwhile in life. And the other one relating to, hope, optimism, the sense that things can be good, our faith that things will work out all right. Combining both of these here, yes, there is that turning of the wheel. Yes, there is that knowledge that we're mortal. Things are finite, just like Joy was talking about, right? That here in this pleasurable moment, there is knowledge that could be gone again in a moment. Okay. But with that luxury card, that Four of Cups, there is that sense that, yes, this is a luxury, so luxuriate. Experience it to its fullest and, cultivate the safe space of the sign of Cancer. Okay. Cultivate that safe space in which to fully appreciate what is good, what is loving, what is hopeful, what sustains faith and sustains life and keeps you going, even when the wheel turns and takes you somewhere you're less happy about. Okay. This is one of those kind of highlight moments in life. And, let's be real. Plenty of folks are very much caught up in the way that their own particular wheel is turning, and they may not even notice it. Okay. Especially if you're feeling as glum as, that fellow on the Four of Cups in the Rider-Waite-Smith looks. Okay. It is perfectly possible that we can not even notice the good things in our lives. But that would be a real shame, right? This combination is the reminder to nurture what is good, give yourself safe space in which to fully feel your feelings and appreciate what is good, and perhaps share that with somebody else who matters to you. I do like to remind people, Cancer is certainly associated with home and family, but it is, to me, very much family of the heart. Because let's face it, not everybody's had great family of origin. But family of the heart, that's something you can cultivate. Those are the people you choose and who choose you. So Venus and Jupiter in Cancer, it's not just about, love relationships, though it can certainly be that. It can be lovely and sweet and romantic, but it can also be camaraderie with the good people in your life who give you a sense of, yes, this is what makes life worth living. So live it up.
Anything else to share, Joy?
No, I love it. These are awesome.
So we're at the time to do a random draw. So Simon and Joy will be shuffling their cards and doing a random draw. And so I want to thank everybody for joining us today, the Astrology Star Sisters, talking about the Gemini ingress. And I want to thank Joy and Simon for joining us here today. It's always a pleasure to have both of you on. And all those that come back and watch at a future time, we appreciate you coming and watching. And we thank you, because we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for our audience. So I muted both of you, so when you're ready, I can unmute you. So are you ready, Simon? Okay. It's always hard to figure out what to say during this moment when they're shuffling their cards and coming up with a card for us for the Gemini season. You ready, Joy? So what do you have for us? I unmuted you so you can talk now. Oh, wait. I didn't unmute you. There we go. Sorry about that.
No worries. So I have a Mercury ruled card, the 10 of Pentacles. And so we have a older couple here and a child and a dog, and then probably the parents of the child back in the background there with a parasol, and just a really beautiful environment. Grapes and a flowering tree, and just a child is petting the dog and has a little toy. It looks like maybe even an elephant or something, but I'm not 100% on that. And so I always think of this is Mercury ruling the third decan of Virgo. And I always think of this as strategizing. And it's like, how can you have long-term success? And so particularly with our 3 planets in Gemini being square to those nodes, including one node in Virgo in the beginning, the south node being in the beginning of Virgo, not the end. But nevertheless, it's like we've got some quick thinking, as Simon said, kind of game oriented, like how can we, like, what are we playing, what's the goal, what's the game that we're playing. But we also have that disruptive Uranus energy in there. And so how can we disrupt the system? How can we disrupt our normal way of thinking for this long-term strategizing, so that you can truly not just plan not just think about and mentalize is that a word? I don't know. Your ideas and your goals, but actually bring them all the way into reality. So I'm really liking that card there. And this is incidentally the Mystical Realm Tarot by Lisa Porter, and it's published by Rockpool. And as you can tell, it's got amazing art and it's a really nice deck.
Thank you for sharing that with us. Simon, are you ready?
Mm.
And I think I have you unmuted,
Okay.
but why won't it? Oh, there we go.
Okay. So I pulled also a pentacle card. This is the 8 of Pentacles. It is reversed. Okay. Its keyword is prudence. It represents the sun in Virgo. Okay. And if we were to look at it right side up, we would see that it shows a tree with these lovely big blossoms and these leaves curling around those blossoms protectively. Okay. So I find it interesting, this this card is a Virgo card, another Mercury ruled card. And perhaps we can take that as an invitation to maybe look forward to Virgo season based on what we planned in Gemini season. But since this card showed up reversed, I feel like there's an indication here of the need to not get too caught up in our thoughts, which makes sense with, Gemini having lots of thoughts to get caught up in. It being a pentacle card, an earth card, then again reminds us to do some appropriate grounding when needed, but also suggests to me, that keyword of prudence that is associated with this card. When this card is reversed, that suggests that maybe we don't have to always play it safe. Considering that the ingress, has the sun conjoining Uranus, that Venus-Jupiter conjunction has Uranus very tightly square the node. So throughout Gemini season, Uranus is going to be squaring the nodes. That suggests then the need for us to be willing to get off the beaten path and to welcome in some surprises and embrace one of the things that Gemini is great for, which is flexibility. And not get too overly in our heads with worry about, is this going to be practical? And instead, lighten up.
Thank you for sharing. So we're going to go back to here. Joy, will you share with us here what you have?
Oh yeah, I've got a class coming up. This is an online class that starts, it's Wednesday evenings, starting on next week on May 20th. And we'll go for 6 weeks, and it's on intuitive development. And so we're gonna look at what intuition is and how you express your own unique intuition, and then how to cultivate that and strengthen it. And of course, I am a tarot reader and astrologer and Reiki practitioner, and take clients both online and here in my office in Burien. And you can find me at joyvernon.com or use that QR code in the upper right corner to get to my website.
So I can be found both on Patreon and at my website, iconalchemy.com. On Patreon, I do art that is based in astrological transits, as well as some custom astrological art for my patrons. And I write about the transits in connection with the art that I am working on. And like Joy and Liz, I am a consulting astrologer and tarot reader. So you can schedule consultations with me at my website, iconalchemy.com.
And I do consultations and have a newsletter, and you're watching the YouTube channel, so like and subscribe. We appreciate it. And there's several shows in the archives and 1 or 2 shows coming out each week. And I want to thank our sponsor, Astro Peregrine Software, an astrology software for Mac and Windows. And you can find out more information on astroperegrine.com. And I want to thank both of you for joining me today. It's been a pleasure as always, and I look forward to having you on again soon. And we're going to say goodbye for now. So goodbye.
Bye.